This is Chris from DiasExMachina. I hope you guys can all hear me. We just started live. We're going to be hitting the start here in a little bit. You can't really see it, unfortunately. That's weird. It cuts off with the landing page. But yeah, we are about to go live on here. I'm going to show the page here in just a second. And let's just hope it all works out. And William's supposed to be on here, but he is running late. But we'll be starting up in about a minute. Probably will launch about a minute early because the emails will start going out and all that stuff. If anyone has any questions, just pop them up in the stream. We're going to be looking at comments for this process. And if you have any questions, we'll pop them up on the channel. But we are going to hit the start button. Start my project. So I guess that means we're live. Project was successfully started. So we are off to the races. Yeah, it shows the project is live. Yep. It doesn't seem to want to show it. I'm going to make sure here. 1 second. Go back, share screen. There we go. There we go. Now we can see it. So here we go. This is the page. We have a early bird, which is the biohazard module, which has been out for a couple months. It's a copper seller on drive-through, but we wanted to offer it to early birds. And this is our main page right here. And I put a little spread there. We have to do some last minute things to make this a bit more clear. But that's the leather edition that we are offering. We've been talking about having some additional stuff, primarily getting a slipcase in there and maybe having some fun with that slipcase, or maybe a box. We did the box for the first one for Affinity. So yeah, it looks like it's good getting the announcement from everyone that everything's gone live. So we're gonna check this, see how it turns out. Some showcases here. Of course, if you know this game, you know what this is being offered. But for those people who are new, dang, which one do I need? Says Corey Allen. Well, we'll go through all of them, and we'll see which ones. So, like I said, we have the new races. So this is if you just have the original Ultramodern 5 and you don't have redo, a lot of this will become new to you because Ultramodern 5 didn't have really races, and we've decided to add races. Altered Kono and Kaiden, like Kono and Kaiden are aliens. Kaiden is basically trying to create a really weird kind of Giger-esque by making it a player character. Kono is a samurai mushroom. Animists are basically animal people, which is different than a splice. Animists are basically animals, humanoid animals, where a splice is a human with some animal property. They were different enough to create another race. Altered are mutants, if you're running a post-apocalyptic campaign. Automaton robots, they've been basically ported over from Norse Basta. A morpher, slightly inspired by a race from Star Frontiers, but it's been going through a few more changes, and Nick drew something that looks right out of the thing, so we kind of went with it. A tuner, which is kind of a psyker, and a yokai, which is kind of the only fantasy one we have here. Let's see, I think I own all your PDFs from Amethyst UM5 special add-on from Affinity. Oh, there you go. Yeah, we are offering Amethyst again with this campaign as well, just because we're still working off of that one. About 70% done the writing for that campaign. Then we have Origins, which are called ladders for those people who do not know what those are. A few people have, like I said, Jeff McAlley or something. I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. He kind of explained them, but no one ever really gets it 100%. Ladders are inspired by the heroes from the original D20 Modern. And what that means is in the old D20 Modern, you created a class. Oh, William's here. We're going to get him joining the stream. We created a class. Anyway, and the classes in D20 Modern was your strong hero, your dexterous hero, and so forth. And then on second level, you pick the prestige class. So that's really when you began. So very often you would create a character at second level. And wow, we didn't want to do that. But I wanted to do the inspiration, the style of what that was like. So we went and we created versions of this. So you basically get a first level ability, which it's not a drastically huge ability. So it doesn't really imbalance if you don't have ladders. But what it primarily does, it allows you to alter your primary attribute. So if you're a dexterous hero, you can use dexterity for a lot of your attack attributes. If you're a veteran, you can use wisdom for a lot of your attack attributes. And then instead of picking a feat or a ability bonus modifier through class progression, you can pick one of these additional abilities, and these get progressively more powerful as you level up. Hey, William.
Hello, hello.
Just going through some of the things we are offering.
Oh, yeah.
So we have 3 ladders. So new classes. From the original version to the new one, we only have one new class, which was the civilian. The civilian was an attempt to try to incorporate some of the things I learned from board games. So the civilian actually plays with bag building. We would play this a lot more, like the Oxymancer in Taurus, which just uses deck building, and I would like to play with that more and more often.
Yeah, I got to test the Oxymancer. Quite fun. The civilian and the face are actually the only 2 classes I've played for Ultramodern, but I love the face.
Which is hilarious because they're both non-combat classes.
I'm a non-combat guy. I'm a big burly looking guy, but I love me some just smooth talking. Let's solve this. Let's solve this puzzle other ways.
Yeah. The face is, like I said, civilian face are both non-combat. Civilian is a person that is just very lucky. So the question here So the UM5 I got a few months ago from Affinity back. It's now missing stuff that's in this one, right? No, that's not true. That's true. You got, if you ordered the Ultramodern5 back with Amethyst, it's the same version here. The only difference, there's 2 definitive versions of Amethyst. There's the of Ultramodern. One's the 2016 release and then the 2019 release. The 2016 release is about 200 pages. 220 pages. It has does not have the races, does not have the mecha, does not have the techno magic, and it's not in color. And then in 2018, we ran our first Kickstarter, which is technically our second Kickstarter. Our first Kickstarter was a small Amethyst one, and that one was the one that kind of launched us. And that is the reason why the new Ultramodern Redo got to 380 pages. The only difference between the 2016 and 2019, other than the fact is the 2019 has more content, the 2016 has only one thing that the 2019 doesn't have, and the 2016 has different modules. There are 2 adventures at the end of these things, and the adventures at the end of Ultramodern 2016 are different than the ones in Redo. That being said, one of those modules is Biohazard, which we updated significantly for this campaign. So Grounder is a classic military guy. Gunslinger, these are both strikers. If you're using the 4th edition mentality, there's a lot of 4th edition mentality going into here. So they have roles to head.
What I loved is that a lot of the 4th edition stuff that I liked, the stuff that I really enjoyed, is what you find in here. There's a lot of stuff in 4th edition a lot of people didn't like, but a lot of the mechanics for how classes worked, I thought was really good in 4th edition.
Well, having definitive roles, like I said, the heavy is a person who uses heavy weapons, but is much more of a controller. It's much more area. If in many ways the heavy, a lot of people don't really like heavy. Oh, this is the big combat. This is the big heavy hitter, and people realize when you see the ability in your race, this guy's actually more like the sorcerer. Although he has the hit points and the damage and so forth, he does mostly area effects. Mm-hmm. Infiltrator is our rogue. He's half of a rogue. He has all the sneaking stuff and the assassination. And we have a marshal who's a leader. The face and the marshal are kind of the leading roles, but the marshal is more of a leader, more of a combat guy. Martial artist, which is our non-magical monk. Medic operates like a magician or sorcerer in a way that he actually has abilities, but they're obviously they're scientific based. Sniper, which is also kind of has some sorcerer-like abilities, and the techie, which is an engineer. The big difference between the way we handle our classes and 5e is that the archetypes are universal. So the archetypes can be selected by anyone. And that's because the archetypes are the exact same levels for everything, which is something I might add that D&D, the new version of D&D that's coming out next year, boasts of having that. They're doing that now. I don't know if they're doing the universal archetypes, but now all the archetypes are the same number at the exact same levels.
Yeah.
Over 130 weapons. It's probably, I think, 135 or so. And that includes our single or one-handed firearms, our two-handed firearms, heavy weapons, super heavy weapons. Those are just a selection. New armor. We have the light armor, medium, heavy that people know about, but then we have the exo armor. Exo armor are kind of classed as being armor and multiple magic items. So if you have an armor and you're trying to think about game balance, you would have multiple magic items representing one piece of armor. There's light, medium, and heavy of those, and the heavies can be large. In Amethyst, we're introducing the idea of super heavy exo armors, which are huge and can be piloted by 2 players, though that's going to be fun. Then we have some vehicles, aircraft, and then we have a mecha construction system, which people have been asking us to do more content for. So something we may approach in the future. 70 monsters. We've been talking about doing a bestiary at some point because we probably have already about 150 monsters that we could.
Well, and just for the adventures, the 4 that I've written, I've done 12 new monsters just for those 4 adventures that are like would be great in a bestiary as well. So we have a lot of content to put in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of content. Plus, we're looking forward to some. Liquid Friends, I'm looking forward to the super heavy armors. If we ever do like a secondary, like a Ultramodern5 redo 2, like an actual second, like the way they made PHP 2, if we do a second version, because originally, like Ultramodern 5, which was originally a sequel to Ultramodern 4, was basically I took all the stuff from Amethyst that wasn't Amethyst, and then I added some more content, and then that made that. And it's the exact same thing with Ultramodern 5. I took all the stuff from Quintessence and then made Ultramodern 5. So Quintessence, Amethyst is very much kind of the test bed for all my weird shit I do. And then Ultramodern 5 gets the results of that. So Amethyst, where we have 5 fantasy classes that we've introduced, which are variations of what people know from regular PHP. I wanted to try my hand of what I would do for a ranger or a knight or what have you. And then we've got a spellcaster, which is freakishly very weird. Like it's nothing like anything anyone's ever seen. And then, of course, in the text section, we've got some new weapons, but the biggest thing we have are these super exo armors, and so the idea that they'll have anywhere from 4 to 5 different weapons. They'll be huge, and 2 players will have a chance to use them. So if you have a character with an initiative order of 20, another one at 17, the 20 gets to go. He can move, and then he can use his action just like they would normally do. And then they can use whatever weapons they have. When the time it gets to the initiative 17, you can move as well. So make sure you're a teamwork so you're not constantly conflicting your movement. And then you can attack, but you can't use the same weapons that the other person used. So you have to use the other weapons. And then once that roll turns around, that person's weapons are freed up, but they can no longer use the weapons that you use. So you guys are basically isolating which weapons you want to use. So you actually have to communicate. So we're reinforcing the huge aspect of Ultramodern 5. What makes Ultramodern 5 different than regular PHP D&D is that D&D, it doesn't really enforce teamwork. I mean, you're a team, but everyone kind of does their own thing. Where here, it's a lot of the class abilities are entirely based around people cooperating. And the super heavy, like I said, and they are totally unbalanced. I mean, like they count as like legendary items. So for multiple players, so if you guys have one as a permanent addition, then quite literally it occupies all the magic items that 2 characters would use. Like that's how kind of crazily powerful that they are. And of course, if you're in a situation where you could always use a huge mecha, that's kind of on the GM at that point. And like if you're in it's like, yeah, this is yet another. The funny thing is the Affinity Paradise module that we did, which you guys played, where the dungeon was colossal, like where the hallways were hundreds of feet high and hundreds of feet wide, and you guys did that for days. That would actually be a point where the mecha could actually go through. Spacecraft, which is the only thing I regret about the spacecraft is that the spacecraft combat rules are actually hiding in the threshold chapter. They don't have their own chapter. If I were to rewrite it, I would have had them as their own section.
Could we, if we have the time, just not change the book, but just have that section pulled out of threshold and like Desert Power easily displayed as a side downloadable
Yeah,
PDF?
there's entirely possibility. What we're doing right now is that one of the adventures is called Threshold, and that's a heavily expanded version of the one that's inside Redo. We're adding in dozens of planets, more ships, pre-designed ship maps, and new monsters that you can encounter. So it's going to expand this 40, 30, 20 page module to about 100. And we're also going to retest and re-expand those rules. And once that happens, we will probably take that section of expanded rules and release them as their own supplement. Yeah. We have here another question here. Adventures and campaigns are all PDFs with POD only, right? Yes, currently they are. Like I said, there is a possibility that if we reach a certain point, like it was a big risk if we were to offer them as physical rewards, just in case the campaign doesn't really do as well. But if it does reach a certain threshold, then we may potentially add in. That's what we did back in Ultramodern and Affinity. We did it twice, which was we reached a certain threshold where a new version got unlocked, and we actually created new pledge levels mid-campaign. We did that with the Deluxe Edition, and we did that with Affinity with the Leather Edition. And it's a bunch of people changed it. So if we reach a certain threshold and we have enough people that have backed it and there's enough support for it, then we may actually end up seeing that happen.
There's potential, but there's no guarantee. But they will be available print on demand, that is for sure. And yeah, as add-ons as well in the campaign, I believe.
Yeah. So, and then we have these maps. There's these location maps, and there's what I call drop-in encounters, combat encounters. These have been pulled over from all the modules that we've done, and they've been colorized. And the combat encounters are just very generic action scenes that you can basically drop into your own. And then the customizable sci-fi maps are part of Threshold. We have the new life path system, which we found out later popped up in, what's that book called, the D&D book? Like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, I think.
Oh, yeah. There's Xanathar's and Tasha's as well. Probably Xanathar.
Oh, yeah. So Xanathar's Guide of Everything put in a life path system, which is almost a carbon copy of the one that we developed in Ultramodern. Now, I say that, but I also fully admit that ours was taken from Cyberpunk 2020.
I was gonna say, because I remember when I first read Ultramodern, when I first met you, it reminded me a lot of Cyberpunk. Not like a lot, but like that one, the life path system was like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is not the same, but familiar to me, which I really, really liked.
Yeah. So so that's something. There's always been a lot of inspiration from that. There's a lot of inspiration for that.
That's good.
So yeah, rules for portable force fields. That was basically, this is designed to kind of mimic Destiny and Mass Effect, these portable force fields. There's a lot of there's a good question. Will there be random generation method for Space Hulks and Threshold? That's exactly one of the biggest things we're going to be doing. The whole point is that we have these maps. I want to create a few more, and basically you can create these random assortments of maps. So it's basically taking, you said for Space Hulks, and the irony I brought up is that there's a board game called Space Hulk. Yeah. And Threshold is not in the 40K universe. None of the lore is similar, but the end result is kind of similar, where you are going through these space dungeons, battling various creatures. And in Space Hulk, that's what you do. You have a modular dungeon map, and you create this. And of course, in Space Hulk, you're Terminators, Space Hulk Terminators, and you're fighting specifically Tyranids. It's a very one-sided, like one player plays the Tyranid and the other player plays Space Hulk, and it's a one-on-one fight. It's over in a half an hour. There's no role-playing. This is a role-playing aspect where you're going to between spaceship to spaceship, and sometimes it's not the same monster. There's actually going to be a bunch of different creatures you can fight, whether it be robots or what have you. But that's basically what that's going to be.
And that's Jeremy Simmons, is the cartographer, doing all those maps. And they're kind of like, you can put them together almost like tiles, it seems like, right?
Yeah, they're entirely tile based. There's
Yeah,
actually a whole
which is so
bunch, and we
great.
may actually make some more. I want him to like most of these are all kind of clean maps, and I want him to do. Hopefully, if we get to that extent, it's one of those stretch goals where he'll create a bunch that are inspired by um, Dead Space. So it's like literally taking some of their big maps and creating much bigger areas.
Very cool.
Yeah, Technomagic spell system. This now the one in Amethyst I think is now my 5th magic system I've designed. So this one is entirely Technomagic. So you use machines like you could have a separate arm that does all the somatic movements and other things. You can have like reactors that contain magical power. Um, and then we have Ultramax, which is something that people have asked for as a separate publication as well. And Ultramax is taking D&D and making it gritty and making it violent. At that point, when you cover damage, there are permanent and big physical effects that happen. If you're hit, it counts as something.
When I was writing Echo Noah 94, I kind of set it up so you can run it as either Ultramax, which I encourage for the more horror themed. If you want to be more adventurous, you run on the standard. But I was writing with the intent this could be like a great, like, hey, this is Ultramax. If you want to make your party have a little squeamish, like every moment.
Yeah. Ultramax. I'm trying to think of what some of the things that Ultramax did. It reduced everyone's hit points, and then it made those hit points in tiers. And then as you cross those tiers, you took a lot of different effects. And then on top of that, we increased people's AC, so it was much harder to hit people. And then there were modifiers to AC based on mitigating factors. So it was more about not just your cover, but how fast you were going, distance, all of this greatly affected your armor class. So these massive modifiers. So the whole point is to not get hit, because if you got hit, you were kind of screwed. And this is as much on the GM as much as the player, but because as a GM, there are a lot of issues with GMs that want to. They feel they have the players. They feel that in combat,
Adversarial
players
for some reason.
Well, no, yeah. Well, there's that, but what I'm saying is the fact that in a lot of encounters, players, um, the GM wants the players to get hurt. Is what I'm saying. So the GM gets into a combat, and he feels that he doesn't want players to walk through it. So they always want them to be hurt, right? He wants them to always win by the skin of their teeth, and so the GM, they find a way to make a combat encounter difficult, and to them, they don't want their encounters to be a pushover, so they make their combats difficult, and also the players just get out with the skin of their teeth, and then they spend their short rest healing. And this is not the way going into Ultramax, because if you do that, your players will be dead very, very quickly because they cannot recover. Like you can't. It's very hard to recover from hit point damage in Ultramax. So that's Ultramax.
I'm a big believer. The way I run games is that it depends on the theme I'm going for. I never want my players to die, but I want them to feel tension. And I think what I learned most from running so many Cthulhu games is that Ultramax has that same ability to make players feel like this is a real thing. I need to think first before I act.
Yeah.
And that's how I like to use Ultramax.
So it's funny because obviously we're running off of BackerKit instead of Kickstarter, so we don't really, I don't know. I was still learning how BackerKit runs their campaign over Kickstarter. And Kickstarter, every single time somebody backs your campaign, I get an email. So it's cool, but it's also frustrating as you try to work and you're just like pop, 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 or something like that. BackerKit's unusual in the fact that apparently they do not send you notices about how many I got one email going, this person backed your campaign. I went, okay, we got one. And then I look at the campaign, like, no, we have 19.
Yeah, I know. I just loaded up. I'm like, oh, yeah. I've gotten more notifications because my people I know have been like, just got it, just backed it, and they're just like, I'm getting dings on Facebook because of that. So I'm actually muting Facebook right now. So
yeah. So I have to go to the DiasExMachina and share the channels because I actually haven't posted it yet. So
I got it. I can do it while you talk.
I'm just why don't you talk about the adventures, because half four of these are yours.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in using and writing what you know, and I know a lot of not unheard of, but small sci-fi movies that both me and Chris are passionate about. That's actually one of the things we bonded over. So Echoes of Noah '94. One of the first movies I actually watched, Chris, was Pandemonium.
Pandorum. You always get
Pandora.
that
I always get it wrong. Listen, it's 9 in the morning. uh, but yeah, Pandorum. And what I love about it was that it was this creepy dungeon crawl-esque movie that had such subverted all these tropes, but still felt so tropey. You kept guessing where things were going, but you had no idea. Also, I think a good Dennis Quaid movie is always his sci-fi movies, and this is probably his best sci-fi movie. So
Yeah,
Echoes of Noah
yeah.
94. Oh yeah, I mean, what was the one he did where he was like buddy with the alien in space?
Oh, Enemy Mine.
And yes, right.
One of
Another
the
great one.
greatest sci-fi '80s movies. If you're hopefully you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about. But it's a great role for Dennis Quaid. Is how I became a fan of him. But it was also probably one of the greatest performances of Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
But yeah, wonderful film. Some of the greatest matte work, incredible visual effects, wonderful musical score by Maurice Jarre. Just a fantastic movie. It bombed horrifically.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of movies I like seem to bomb, but
Yeah. Just watch
so
the
yeah,
first. If you watch the first 5 minutes of Enemy Mine, if you're not hooked in that movie, turn it off. Because of course, Enemy Mine's first 5 minutes opens up with a space battle, right? But it was, I think, it was done by ILM, and it's a very good. You can see the traveling mats, unfortunately, which is something you could see in all films in the '80s, even Star Wars. George Lucas has painted all of those out for the re-release, but if you ever saw Star Wars, you could see those matte lines. And for we're talking about the traveling mats. If you look at an image from a movie from the '80s, you look very carefully, you'll see this slightly off contrast box around the ship as it's moving through space. In fact, I remember very clearly there was a scene from Empire Strikes Back where the two Star Destroyers are moving towards the camera to chase down the Millennium Falcon, and you can see these two rectangles go boop, boop, boop
yeah.
as the Star Destroyers get closer, and you have to be really clever to see it. But you can see them in Enemy Mine. Once again, you have to know what you're looking at. But if you look at the ships, you can see these ovals all around, the oval halos are on the ship, but you have to know what you're looking at.
I always thought that was
yeah,
just force fields as a kid, so you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, there you go. They're force fields that move very strangely.
That's very
But yes,
strange.
okay. Pandorum is a great movie. And there's a game called Pandorum,
Yes.
which has
Well, Nemesis.
nothing to do with the. It's a weird game. It's a good game. It's a very, very good game. I really like it. I think my wife maybe sell it, but it's a very, very good game. But it is a game where you're basically on an alien planet and you're trying to lay down mining rights with this kind of floating aircraft carrier. And on its own, it's an area control game. You put down stuff and you're constantly battling for resources. But they've made it a weirdly horror elements to it. Like, it's a very dark setting. Like, it's not a Euro game with the date go, because like if you go to a volcano and you have the ability to there are these random events that pop up, and one of them turns the volcano into an alien spacecraft. That doesn't do anything, but the alien spacecraft is the jockey ship from Alien, right? And one of the other things, you come across alien civilization, and then there is a massive fossilized Giger xenomorph. So there's all these little alien references in there, and it's called Pandorum. And I thought, oh, but Pandorum is not a word. The movie Pandorum made up the word Pandorum. And so this game just stole the name of this movie and then made their game around it, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah. So Echoes of Noah '94 is essentially a love letter to those, not just Pandorum, but that is the theme of that whole is definitely inspiration. There's a little bit of Outlander in there, which I know you also love. And just like this whole idea of being like, you're just sent off to do a job. You're blue collar in space. It's very different than like, Threshold, but has some similar inspirations. But it's written to be kind of like a dungeon crawl adventure within a spaceship, akin to some of my favorite adventures I used to run for like second edition. It's horror based. Has the optional rule set for Ultramax. So there's some things about how you can run it with Ultramax in there. But it's all basically this idea that you are a colony ship one of 100, and you are the Echo no you're a Noah 94, a very, you know, like Noah's Ark kind of, very, you know, on the nose. But your whole idea is that you are trying to find a place to park down the next, you know, output for humanity, because Earth is failing, which is a pretty common, you know, sci-fi trope. But
Yeah.
a lot of dark turns, a lot of behind the scenes political things happen. There's a lot of terrorism, and a lot of all these elements are happening all in the background, and you're just a member of a cruise ship trying to figure out what happened, where you are, what's going on. So I'm excited for it. I can't say too much because there's a lot of like stuff I don't want to give away, but it is definitely, it's the only horror one in the whole lot here that I'm well, I mean,
Well, Threshold has horror elements, but it's
yeah.
also mostly it's an exploration story. I mean, you could make Threshold. Threshold is Jeff actually said it best. He said it's a dark space opera. It's a space opera, but it's a dark space opera.
Yeah,
and that actually was a
call
pretty
it
good
grim, dark,
explanation.
but dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that Echo is definitely kind of leans more into the horror. It is basically like some of the things I learned from, you know, writing, you know, Call of Cthulhu stuff over the last couple of years. It just has kind of delved into that. There's no eldritch beings by any means, but it definitely is my love of like corporations being bad. What happens when, like, you know, the environment is beyond repair, and then also just this like what does hope mean for humanity, and what does it look like if we don't have Earth? That's kind of like all these themes I like to roll in it, all in a nice tidy package inspired by, you know, Ben Foster and Dennis Quaid being cool. Ben Foster's also in Pandorum.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Clonefall is actually Chris's idea, but I'm taking point in writing it. But it's a heist, but a cyberpunk style heist. And I gotta say, I love cyberpunk stuff. I've never written anything for cyberpunk, but I like the idea of it just being more, once again, you know, because I think it's like this whole idea of you need to like. I actually haven't written anything on. I haven't written it yet, but the whole idea is that you are a group of people in this like cyberpunk futurist world planning this epic heist. Yeah, a lot of alliance to be formed. I want it to kind of be more of an open world investigation where you plan the heist and you kind of explore the city and get to like the city. I want to be almost like it is actually an element that you can interact with, like a lot of NPCs, a lot of things that you as a GM can then throw at the players or have them interact, where they can kind of like, here's an open map to explore in the city while you plan out your own heist. And then, yeah, so it's wielded very differently, where Echo is very much like, you know, not Railroader. You can kind of go and figure out how you want to go, but there's a set map you're going through, versus Clonefall is I'm basically making a giant city for you to explore, gather information from, plan your heist, execute the heist.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have Madness at the Megalomart.
Madness at the Megalomart. This was inspired just from working the pandemic in retail. I own a small grocery store. And yeah, there's many a times when you're just dealing with people who are just very unhappy, very, you know, scared and very upset about whatever is going on in this world during this pandemic, where you kind of started imagining them as monsters. So this whole idea is that you are in a giant store, like a Walmart supercenter, a superstore, this epic, you know, like land shark of a store. This is, what do you call it? Cement jungle building that just gets sort of teleported through magical means, through a special Betamax tape to the past, or to like a fantastic universe.
I always forget about the Betamax tape.
The Betamax is my favorite part, because like as a kid, all we had, like my dad owned a furniture stores when we were growing up, so all my friends had VCRs. Well, my dad, the Betamax didn't sell, so he brought home a Betamax for us, because that's what he had on the shelf. Then we had Laserdisc. I was almost going to do Laserdisc, but then I didn't know how all you could record on a Laserdisc, versus Betamax, you could record yourself on it. Not as well as you could VHS, but yeah, so it's inspired by this idea where like an old lady brings this VHS, or probably a Betamax tape, to the store, saying, I bought this 20 years ago. I had a lifetime guarantee on it. It doesn't work. So the team fixed the Betamax player. They play the tape, and a la, you know, just this like weird things going on. All the people in the store start turning into monsters, and then you are just forced to deal with it using only the resources you have in a giant Walmart supercenter.
Which means you're armed to the teeth.
Armed to the teeth, but you're like, but you have, you know, it's still limited resources. Like so like I ran a test of this one a while ago, and my players had like fortified the walls of the supercenter inside. Like, we're just gonna bunker down, And the whole campaign, all 20 sessions of it, was just them in Walmart I was just sending legions of like demons at them from the outside. And it just became this like really fun. So it can kick off a lot of cool ideas. But the whole idea is that, yeah, you are in the store. It's a giant map of the store. I actually used a blueprint of an actual Walmart here in Prince George. I got my hands on the actual blueprint from how it was built. Thank you, City of Prince George. It's all online. Then I just have reskinned it for this map. And yeah, you are basically an employee of Megalomart. And the customers have gone full demonic Karen. And you must defend yourself and find a way back home through magical means in this new world.
If fantasy calls it West Marches, what would you call it for Cyberpunk? I'll let you address that one.
What was that you cut out there?
Oh, Corey's question there. If fantasy calls it West Marches, what would you call it for Cyberpunk?
Oh, I don't know. Huh. That's a really good question. I'm so like, I love Cyberpunk. I haven't run much in it.
But I did a lot of heavy Cyberpunk campaign back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think, like, first of all, I think West Marches is like wilderness, right? The idea that it's
a slog through this open, vast kind of like.
See, I'll answer that pretty easily. West Marches in Cyberpunk is okay. Well, just reflex action without thinking too hard about this. West Marches is the vast majority of what Cyberpunk 2069 was about. Like, how much of Blade Runner 2077. No, Blade. No, I'm getting the names confused. Blade Runner 69, isn't it 69? And the Cyberpunk 2077, Blade Runner 2069, or whatever. What is the Blade Runner movie again?
Now you got me confused, and it was
my 2049. It was 2049. 2069 is a porno. Anyway, so 2049. so Blade Runner 2049, the vast majority of it is set outside of the city. So you see the massive, like, just colossal what's the word I'm thinking of? Just a big landfill. Thank you. It's just a massive landfill, and there's garbage everywhere, and there's actually people living there, and you have people surviving. There's out in the wilderness there. I mean, there's the foster home or the orphanage where the one character apparently was found, and it's also out in this wasteland. Or then you see what happened to Las Vegas, and you see Las Vegas is this wasteland is just completely filled with this orange fog. It's completely abandoned, but it's this futuristic city. If I was to think West Marches, I would think West Marches. That would be West Marches in a cyberpunk city. You would create a situation where a good chunk of the world of the campaign is actually not in the city, but it's actually surviving outside the city. And obviously the blasted what's the wasteland outside of Judge Dredd called? It's like the blasted
lands. No,
yeah,
no, that's World of Warcraft. Oh,
but they have their own version of that as well.
Yeah. So yeah, this would be, because this is definitely like a megalopolis march. You know what I mean? Like, this is like you are within a giant city. Like, you are within like the Blade Runner style, like neon lights, bright things. You know, the higher up you go, the better your life is. Kind of like towers. From what I've written of the city so far, which is not much. I love the Rusty Angel novels. You know, they actually they made a movie recently. What's his name? Did Sin City director?
Oh, Frank Miller.
No, Frank Miller did not direct.
Oh, you're not talking about the writer. You're talking about Rodriguez?
Yeah, thank you. Robert Rodriguez just directed a movie about Battle Angel Marie.
Battle Angel Alita.
Thank you. Wow.
Or Gundam, if you were to take the original Japanese. Yeah, Battle Angel Alita.
That city is also like one of those like three cities I looked at to kind of inspire me for the actual like city for Clone Fall.
Yeah.
Little gem of the holograms in there too.
There's a kind of a civilization that's inspired by Alita in the New Amethyst. One of the bastions, Motigo, has that type of thing where they're floating above a city that they suppress, and but instead of being this like one weird trumpet, it's three floating towers. But anyways, that's that Phantom Stage.
Phantom Stage. So Phantom Stage, I actually started writing this the night of Grand Con in my room after I was hanging out with you. It's the idea about there's a town in Prince George, or not in Prince George, near Prince George, called Barkerville. It's very much a gold mining hub. It's got a lot of like people go there and they tour it. It's got a lot of like history as far as the gold rush goes. It burned down. It was buried in a mudslide. It's got a lot of stuff. This town has just been the peak of like that early gold rush, like capitalism in here in BC. People from Alaska talk about Barkerville. It's just that it was just this big peak, gold town. It's what made BC like so popular at for one point, and why they wanted to connect us up and build the railroads. Anyways, so there's this ghost story about Barkerville, about how the stage is haunted. It's a famous theater there. I don't want to give away a whole lot of details, but the idea is that really I thought was really wonderful. I know that it's very much proven it's not true. It's not a haunted thing, all that. But I like what would happen if you were tasked to go to a town like Barkerville and investigate a bunch of like weird mysteries, kind of like not Scooby-Doo-esque, but definitely have this kind of like weird and wild like take on like ghosts, mysteries, gold hunting, greed, what gold means to people, how there's a lot of like taking a lot of the old, because I found a lot of cool books. I got 3 from the library here in Prince George about old omens that gold miners here in Barkerville would tell each other about, like how like if your gold gets blood on it in the first 3 days, it means that your death's coming to you, and like all these things that we talk about. So I've done a lot of these things that were never popular tropes outside of Barkerville. I've actually found, and then I'm adding to this thing to kind of really get this really good taste of like this, like this is just the fears that these old miners had about protecting their property, their gold, and like what ghosts meant to them.
And if the story is what we were talking about, there's going to be a surprising little twist near the end of that adventure, which we want to state is absolutely true. They're going to go, oh, this is nuts. This is crazy. And you're like, actually, that part of Barkerville is accurate. This actually happened.
Yeah, like so. This is as close as I'll ever get to by writing a historical story. It's names and places are not real, but it's all based on like true events, which is what I think is so interesting about this adventure. So it's a lot to like take from that front. Barkerville's an interesting place with like hidden graveyards, and so not only like every adventure I've written is going to be, here is a good 3 session to 4 session adventure. But I'm also adding stuff that allows you to, like, if you like that town, the whole town's fleshed out for you. The whole campaign, the whole little bit of a world is fleshed out. It's not a full campaign setting by any means, but it's enough that you could start a whole campaign off of these adventures. Each one of them starts a whole, like, Megalo Mart. You have this whole world to now, like, oh, I can now, my players are staying here in this, like, Grothin, the name of the world they've teleported to, where it's full of, like, demons and things like that. They're going to make their own home for it. Echoes of Node 94. The players are going to do what they want with their own ship now. They're going to do anything they want to do, depending what Clonefall. You have this whole amazing city now to operate in, to run more adventures if you want, more heists, anything you want. Phantom Stage, same thing. I just wanted to make sure it's like these are tipping off points as well, using the Ultramodern rule set, the themes that Ultramodern does so well, and allows you to basically create more content. And I've just given you, a little piece of my brainchild, just to like, you can take it and now make it completely your own.
Yeah, exactly. So in regards to Threshold, like we'll talk about retro last. Threshold is a variation on what we were talking about these space dungeons, and we talked about it at length already, so I won't go too much into detail. But you basically have a ship, and you and your crew, which are the other players, are traveling across this section of the universe, finding old wrecks to salvage, because that's all that's left to basically recover. There's been a massive push for resources, and a lot of those resources got starved out, and so all that's left to recover are these old ships. And this is based off of a very, very old campaign I ran in the 90s called Pathfinder. Ironic that now we have a Pathfinder, a fantasy game, where that's the premise. We played around with the premise a bit more, so now it's a setting where players are part of this old colony of worlds that have managed to finally open up a warp gate to one of the older sections of civilized man, and then they find the entire section of space abandoned, and seemingly all the humans in this sector of space have vanished. And so that's why you have all these empty colonies and ships, and so that's where the mystery comes from. And as a result, we have these threats that are emerging, and then we have these universal maps. But Retroverse has been the one that's gotten some controversy, which we'll talk about here. But Retroverse Chronicles is a alternative 1980s setting. The premise that I pitched was that in 1940s, like out of Roswell, somebody's made a question here. We'll adjust in a second. Where there's they find this technology, which is this little device that can instill a very specific piece of knowledge, to build a very specific piece of technology or a very specific idea, whether it be genetics or engineering or what have you. And that is also instills a drive to build that item or create that thing. And they called it a spark plug because it gives you the spark of this inspiration and so forth. And the first one they found injected into one guy the knowledge to make more of them. So the only person that can make these spark plugs is one guy. And so he was driven, and he started making dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens. At that point, things started to go crazy for this in the world, and we started seeing these weird mutations in technology that would get thrown out. And there was interdimensional gateways, giant robots, genetic engineering. And so by the time we get to the mid 80s, although it looks like the 80s, there's a lot of these weird, freakish technology. And it's set in the United States when civilization is starting to collapse as a side effect of this. If we get forward with it and it funds, one of the things I want to do is actually tell a story. Write a novel per se of the story, and then have that interject. Now, I've done it before with Amethyst and Affinity, where we have the story segments, but I've never told the whole story. I've always told segments of the story, and so you'd have to find the novel to do it. And one of the things I want to do with with Retroverse, is to tell the whole story. So it's the entire story that's in there. So you'll read it, and as you're reading the novel, you're also exploring the world as well. It's going to be a very different approach. I don't think anyone's ever tried it on a major publication like this before. And if it does well, there's another one called Dream of the Tempest that I also want to do, which is a similar idea. Both of these are part of a trilogy of stories I want to write. I call it the romance trilogy. I'm probably gonna have a better name for it when I start writing them. But they have common points. One, they're post-apocalyptic. Two, they have a romantic subplot with their main characters, or actually the romantic storyline is actually the primary subplot, and it has a very specific arrangement of relationship. Who each side of the relationship is. They're very specific in both of them. So if you were to read Retroverse and then read Threshold and read Dream of the Tempest, you'll see 5 or 6 very common points. We have somebody's been posting in the Discord, which I'm going to address here in a second. Just a bit confused by the pricing. Like, all I really wanted out of this was a basic print, ideally of the alt cover, because it's sick. Since I missed out on adding it to the Affinity cover, but the basic print edition is more expensive here than it was in Affinity. I have to please remember, I'm going to say, that the prices here are in US. And the prices with the other ones were all in Canadian. So the prices should be nearly the same. In fact, yeah, so we matched the prices to the original Ultramodern campaign from 2018.
Yeah.
And same thing, I'd the prices for the deluxe version, if you translate to Canadian, like if someone says this is off by that, we went with the exchange rate. So like whenever I sell the deluxe edition, for example, off of a shelf, I charge about $100 for a deluxe edition. So you translate into the US, we see the US pricing there. So the luxury leather version being about $100, that's in US, so it's actually like $129, $130 Canadian. But that's just to make sure people aren't confused by that this campaign is listed in U.S. funds compared to all my previous campaigns. Because Kickstarter does not let you change if you are based out of
Canada.
Yeah. So he says the price is $53 USD for the basic print. So yeah, we're I think $3 more. That might have been because of inflation or what have you. Yeah, but it's interesting. You know, I think it's because we're trying to create more of the deluxe edition that we are able to kind of offer the deluxe edition at a better price. But I was trying to make this. I was trying to pair the prices based off new estimates from our what's the word?
Printer.
Oh, thank you. From our printer. So we have a new printer. So the prices changed.
And the
slightly.
Same printer as Affinity, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, my quality in Affinity was amazing. Like, I liked the Ultra. I had the Ultramodern Deluxe from last one from 2019. But the print quality, I could tell it just from opening the book from Affinity was just so much better. So I'm glad for the switch.
Yeah, so we're closing in on 3K. We're about almost an hour. At 10 o'clock, we'll end the stream and we'll just let things going so William can go off and advertise the heck out of this to places and do his magic, and then I get to go back to writing Amethyst, which I have not done for the last week and a half because I've been doing getting this whole thing ready for this campaign.
Well, it ended up being kind of nutty. The campaign ended up having to come out a little bit faster than we originally intended, and then all of a sudden it was you and I were also running a gourmet arts festival at the same time. So
yeah, somebody was asking. I addressed this in the FAQ, but I guess this person didn't catch it. They said, "Asked how do you choose the alternate cover?" I couldn't find the option. When the campaign ends and the pledge manager launches, you can choose your cover there. So there's that reply for that one. And somebody's asking about why the deluxe edition would get a few dollars cheaper and the standard edition would get more expensive. And the answer is the answer is actually shockingly complicated in how our printer handles this book. Basically, I'm typing out the brain. The answer is shockingly complicated in how our printer handles this book. The way Round Color does it, they print the interior for all the books, then do the cover separately. And that's a very unusual way of doing it. So the way Togo did it, they would run the standard editions through, get the covers and print them, and then they would reset for the deluxe edition. So I'll say that here. So Togo, the first printer, would run the standards through and run the deluxe. To save on money, they let's go Round Color runs the entire interior and separates the covers later. So that's a very unusual, but it creates this situation where the higher books got cheaper, but the average price of all of them, but the basic one got a bit more expensive because the interior is the same for all of them. So there's a very good possibility that we may have a situation where we may have the same paper quality. I'm trying to see about finding a way of making the paper quality for the limited edition slightly better. So we'll see about that. Let's see here. Going back to the campaign
also,
page.
did you mention the 48-hour early bird?
Yeah, okay, so the 48-hour early bird, back Ultramodern 5, plus our campaign adventures. In the first 48 hours, and receive Biohazard, a 45-page adventure, expanded adventure for free. So the Biohazard module, like I said, there were 2 modules in the original 2016 Ultramodern. It was called Biohazard, and the second one was called Invasion Proxy. Invasion Proxy is getting a little dated. Even when we re-released it as an expanded adventure, I decided not to change it because it's very much a subject of its time. Invasion Proxy is an alien invasion in Iraq in the near the Green Zone during the American occupation. So it's very much a product of the early 2000s. No, it should be noted that this is no longer applicable. There's no longer a Green Zone. The United States pulled out of Iraq, and so I had 2 choices. I could either rewrite the entire premise or make it an alternative universe. And I decided to not change it and make it an alt universe. So saying that this is actually set in 2010 during the Iraq occupation. So it becomes a bit more of an alternate universe story rather than something that's topical. Biohazard is a zombie apocalypse. So it's but unlike other kind of zombie adventures, this one definitely tries to play off of the Left 4 Dead formula where you're not fighting 5 zombies, you're fighting 20 or 30 zombies in an encounter. This was really easy in the 2014 in the 2010 Ultramodern 4 version because you had minions. And so we had minion zombies. And so we created new zombies in this one that people could pop very easily. So if you're doing area effects, you're destroying 4 or 5 zombies in a battle. And for the expanded version, we added a few more monsters and we added a few more encounters to do it. So now it's 45 pages instead of being like 15. Pre-made characters are also included. And it's very much still inspired by Left 4 Dead to the point that before we only had like 3 monsters. We had the Brute, we had a regular guy and the regular chum, and then a kind of a scout guy. And now we actually threw in all the monsters inspired from Left 4 Dead. So bloaters and the guys that have a whipping tongue and all that. So they all show up now. So it's a 45-page adventure, and anyone who backs within the first 45 minutes will get that adventure for free. But we'll also notice here, also available for all returning backers. And that's something we've also added in. So if you are a returning backer, then you're also eligible for this. So it doesn't matter if you back now or later. If you're a returning backer of any of our campaigns, then you are that applies to you. So we'll go past it, and we have the GM screen. GM screen was unlocked in the original Ultramodern, so it's now available. There's an SRD, which we are including, and the SRD is something you can find right now. You can go on to DriveThruRPG, and you can download it for free. So if you want to see what our rules are like for free, you can go to that link and do it. We have these DLC supplements. What I realized I have the wrong image there. I have game feats in Invasion Proxy. It's supposed to be game feats in Desert Power, so I'm going to go fix that after the stream is over. Game feats is just a bunch of completely broken feats inspired by video games. It's almost meant for comedic purposes than anything else. And then Desert Power is not inspired in any way by a certain franchise that's currently out there. That being said, if we do end up one of the stretch goals is expanding it to include a bunch of other things that are desert inspired, like Mad Max and stuff like that. So it may include a bunch of other things that are not in any way. 45 minutes, you mean 48 hours? Oh, did I say 45 minutes? Yeah, 48. First 48 hours, you're eligible for the. Did I say 45 minutes?
I must have. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a flash sale. No, it's a 48 hours.
Exactly. You have 1 hour. And then there's the exclusive alternate cover. Somebody asked about the alt cover. How do you select it? It's only available for the regular print edition, not for the deluxe or the leather, obviously. And to do it, you just need to back the campaign for any of the print editions. When the Pleb Manager goes live, you will get the opportunity to select which cover you want, the standard or the alternative edition. And yes, the word alternate won't be on there. That's just there for there. And these are the pledges. There's quite a few pledges to go through just because we have 3 different editions. I tried to organize them in a couple different ways. If you go up here, we separate them by basic pledges, the complete pledges, and so forth here. So you can see how the advantages kind of increase. And we have the big ones here with the personalized experiences, which are when William here runs an adventure for people. You can do any adventure you want, but obviously it'd be fun to do one of the 7 or 8 that we have offered. The basic digital set gives you the Ultramodern 5 plus the DLC. The adventure set gives you just the adventures. The complete set is everything digital and also gives you access to the Roll20 and Fantasy Ground modules. The standard print, and then we have the standard print plus adventures, and then the complete, and the same thing with the deluxe. These are just variations on the same thing. These are the exact same 3 packages, just with different books. And then the same with the leather. And then we have the 2 big ones below. And then the retail pledge, which I also realize I have to send out to people. We have a couple of videos. We have the Gaming Gang done by Jeff. He has his video. We just went live. We have a video from How to RPG, which used to be called How to D&D, but he changed his format because he really doesn't like WotC anymore. And then these here are a bunch of older videos that came out with the 2018 and older. Like this is a review of the original 5e one from 2016. And these are 2 live plays. And then stretch goals. We'll see. And these are expanded. There's actually a lot more stretch goals. The other thing I also like about BackerKit is that all the add-ons are really easy to include. So when you back the campaign, you'll see an add-on menu. So I don't need to have all the add-ons and all the prices here. So here you just basically go here and you can click and purchase any of these things if you want. There's all talk about virtual tabletop, and then the creators, me, you, and Nick. Nick, who I didn't realize, like Nick is a adorable little guy. He's a very nice guy. I did not realize that when he was young, he looked like James McAvoy. Or I say he's James McAvoy who infiltrated Ukraine and became the president because he looks like a cross between Zelensky and McAvoy. And he was like, "Oh, really? That's awesome." I was like, "Yeah," because I was like, "Are you in Ukraine running the country?" And then my wife Nicole looked over and said, "He looks like James McAvoy." And then
I was going to say James McAvoy meets Vincent Price. Just
Oh yeah, that's going old school. Of course you would. And then Jeremy Simmons, our cartographer. And this is our disclaimer, our compatibility license. And you'll notice that we're actually referencing the Creative Commons license instead of the OGL. And that's because of the new policy changes with D&D, which is another reason why people wondering why we can say the word Dungeons and Dragons instead of just saying 5e, because the OGL had a stipulation that you couldn't say D&D by name. Now with Creative Commons, we are no longer bound by that, so we can say, I can say third-party non-fantasy book for 5e Dungeons and Dragons. By the way, we're now at 42 backers. We still have our pledge train going, which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, like I said, this is the highest goal we've had, so it may take longer for us to get to that goal. So we'll see. I'm pretty sure the emails all went out. But
you did the Roll20 emails already? Not Roll20, the Drive-Thru RPG emails?
Which is through Roll20 now because they're merged. Yeah, I do believe I'm trying to get the confirmation from Adam Jury that the emails did go out. And they're going to continue watching this, and we'll see what happens. And let's hope we fund and we get some extra check on the side and help us make this campaign a reality.
Yeah, because if this campaign does well, we have a lot of amazing ideas on the horizon. It's just it's got to take it one project at a time.
Yep, Apex and Neurospasta reprints are the next on the horizon. Probably a bestiary for Ultramodern.
And then I'd love to do an espionage world.
Yeah, people have been asking us about spy themed adventure. So we'll see what happens then. But we'll end off with there. It's about 10 o'clock. We're going to start doing some work and promotion, and I think I still have another podcast to do at noon with Paco. So I'm going to go do that. Thanks, everybody. If you have any more questions, drop them in the videos or post it on the Kickstarter campaign. We'll be addressing them and answering them as they pop up.
That's it. I'll be there.